climate is what you expect and weather is what you get. And all of a sudden these AI models have appeared on the scene in the last 3 or 4 years, and they have massively improved. We can use AI models to predict the likely number of people who might appear at a certain A&E after a particularly extreme storm. In advance, warning the HSE, warning hospitals, you can expect between X and Y number of people turning up.
Andrew, thank you for coming in today.
Delighted to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your journey to now, and how did you get into this field? Because it's not one of those ones where you kind of, you're 4 or 5, what you want to be when you grow up, right? It's one of the, it's quite a different one.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So, I think for as long as I can remember when I was a kid, I wanted to be in banking. I don't know why. I think, banking. I think I always wanted to make money. And so I did a degree in maths, and then I still thought I was going to go into banking or employment. I ended up getting a job in marketing, bizarrely, in London. And I did that for 2 years, and I just found it soul-destroying. It was so repetitive what I was being asked to do. It was a lot of data analysis, but back then it was just being given a data set and doing the same thing to it, and another data set doing the same thing to it. And at the time, I read a book. This was like the early 2000s. And the book, I don't know if anyone remembers it these days, it was called No Logo by Naomi Klein. And it was all a kind of anti-globalization book and about climate change and all kinds of other things. And it totally changed my perspective on things. I thought, what am I doing? Why am I working in marketing? There's all this important stuff going on. I've done a degree in maths, which enables me to do more or less anything. So I thought, right, I want to go and do something in climate change. And I found a PhD, which was working on kind of machine learning for sea level rise, bizarrely. And then I did that PhD, really, really enjoyed doing something different all the time and working in something that I felt was important and using my skills for something that was important. And slowly over time, then I moved to Ireland and I carried on working on kind of climate change. At the time I moved to Ireland was just about the time when the recession hit. Getting funding as an academic was really, really hard. So I kind of had to move out of things. So I ended up working on everything. I ended up working not only on climate change. Climate change was always my thing in the background, thing I really wanted to do. But I ended up working on AI for 3D printing. I ended up working in bioinformatics, anything essentially where I could just keep my funding going and it would enable me to do a little bit of work on the side on climate change. But luckily the economy recovered. Climate change became a much bigger thing. We started to notice more in terms of weather extremes, sea level rise, all the things that are kind of happening. So because I've been able to kind of keep that bit of funding going, I've been able to kind of work that more and more and more into my daily role. And now that's what I'm doing.
It's such a solid background to have that maths, that foundation for so many different opportunities that you can go, because you become so logical in terms of your thinking. And then if you got that marketing element, then you've got your higher purpose with the climate change. And then I know you're kind of pivoting across the way for the funding, but I'm guessing that's giving you extra design thinking and perspectives with what you do, the different stakeholders you've had, the nuance with the problem that you're working through to try to come up with a solution. Do you think that's kind of helped you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, you're working with so many people who aren't experts in maths or machine learning or AI or statistical modeling, any of those things. So you're constantly aware that you've got to put what you do, the things you're doing with the data, into measurements, into things that they understand. And that kind of generic consultancy skill, I think I've really picked up over the course of it. Working in marketing, working in 3D printing, working in bioinformatics, all of those. It just forces you to be constantly thinking, okay, I'm doing all this crazy maths over here. They're not going to understand any of that. I've got to find a way of making this meaningful and useful and the results useful to people at the other end.
And your day-to-day role, what does that encompass now?
Well, it's changed a lot, I guess, over the last few years. I mean, 5 or 6 years ago, I was coding a lot. I was working a lot with students. We were working on kind of coding problems, and I was spending a lot of time writing Python or R code. These days, as I've kind of got sort of larger funding grants, I now find myself almost like a matchmaker, I think. So I end up seeing that there's a potential good idea or a project that's coming up and finding other academics that I work with. So usually kind of early career stage academics who are looking to kind of pick up grants and students and things like that, and then finding good students and trying to push those kind of people together. So these days I do a lot more kind of curating of projects and getting people together.
So you're able to spot an opportunity, but also kind of bring people together to kind of get them to move on things and to take it to the next level. Weather is obviously such an important point in this country. Like if we didn't have weather, what would we talk about, right? What are we going to actually speak about? It's such a safe subject. I noticed a few different reasons for that. But what gives you the energy to keep going down this rabbit hole? Because for me, it feels like it's changing so rapidly that you've had incredible May where we've been worried about rain here, we've worried about water, and now it's been raining for quite a bit of June. And your expectations, you just don't quite know what you're getting. Is it completely fluctuating year on year? Is it quarter by quarter? Is that just my mindset? And again, I'm just talking locally. If you want to talk globally as well, what's keeping you going down this track?
Well, I mean, for me, there's so many bits of it that I just find enormously interesting. There's the fundamental maths of what's going on with the weather, the physics and things like that that's happening. I think it's so relevant to our lives, and I think it's becoming more and more relevant to our lives as we go through. I think that there's an important distinction to make in terms of what you're saying there. So one common saying is that climate is what you expect and weather is what you get. So there's the underlying climate, which is sort of slowly or more increasingly rapidly changing, underlying what's going on. But we're starting to get more and more of these weather extremes that we're noticing. So I think Met Éireann pointed out the other day that this was the warmest spring on record that we'd had. And we're just constantly setting all of these records. And for me, aside from the underlying fun and interestingness of the science, it's the importance of being sure we're on top of all of those things, that we're prepared for not only longer term climate changes, but also those weather extremes and when they hit, and making those warnings, however we have to adapt to those, as meaningful and as helpful as possible to people.
Yeah, because when you think about a gut feel of, it's felt warmer this, but then you can actually go back and check the spring and see the numbers year on year and then the impact of that. Please give me 30 seconds of your time. It blows my mind that only 9% of listeners actually subscribe to our podcast. I'm going to ask you one favor. If you like and enjoy this podcast, please can you subscribe? That one thing will really, really help us in the team get you the very, very best guests. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Tell us a little bit about the data journey, then leveraging that data to start to unleash AI and some of the applications that you're seeing that are most impactful day to day.
Yeah, so I guess most people who don't follow sort of weather forecasting in depth don't really realise, but weather forecasting over the last 2 or 3 years has undergone an incredible transformation due to AI. It's the same reasons that AI has transformed loads of other industries at the moment. So I mean, you've got that combination of these new methods, these new transformer and diffusion methods, which are the underlying tools of AI and graph neural networks. You've got the computing. We're enabled to run these complicated models on bigger data sets than we were before. We've got that. And then we've got these data sets. Weather's a wonderful place to work in AI because there's so much data out there and it's all open. Like you can get data on satellites, you can get data from across the world, you can get really great data for Ireland, and it's all open, it's all available for everybody, which I don't think is the case in other areas where you've got far more kind of issues to deal with those things. For 50, 60 years, we've had physics-based weather forecasting models, and they've kind of slowly got better. They've improved by something like 40% over the last 40 years. And all of a sudden, these AI models have appeared on the scene in the last 3 or 4 years, and they have massively improved. They've beaten all the physics models. I think that whereas the physics models have gone up by about 40%, the AI models have beaten it by about 90%.
90%. So I wrote that down. AI has improved it by 90% in 4 years.
Yeah.
Like if you were to say that across any other industry in terms of an impact area and then building on the physics, like you're just in this kind of playground of opportunities.
It's an enormous kind of gold rush at the moment of so many things we can do and so many exciting opportunities for this work. The AI models have thrown the physics away, essentially. They're not using any of the physics at all, and they're still beating it in terms of accuracy. And there's loads of interesting questions there. Are the AI models finding fundamental physics of the weather system that we actually haven't found out? In which case, what are they? Like, can we use these tools and compare them to see what other things are doing? So we can really learn some fundamentally interesting things about the weather that we wouldn't have known beforehand through the AI.
So then you've got AI and traditional, and then you've got AI and extreme weathers. What's the kind of the difference, or how do you approach those two different areas?
Yeah, so the one area I'd say where the AI really hasn't quite beaten the physics-based models is in the extremes. So we're starting to see some of the models, the AI models are starting to do well in terms of storm path predictions. So we've all seen those kind of hurricane paths and things like that. They do really, really well on that, just as well as the physics-based models. But the physics-based models still beat it in terms of predicting, say, the amount of rainfall or the wind speeds and things like that when they get up to the really high extreme levels. And I think there's some really interesting work to do in that place. So you can think of what's the AI model seen before that it can learn about that extreme. It might have seen a similar hurricane in another location, and therefore it's able to kind of predict from that. But it might be something it's never seen before, and this is the problem we're in. When we have fundamental kind of climate change, this underlying change in the types of hurricanes that we get, the AI model might not have seen anything like this before. So I think there's still a role for the physics in there, and building the two together will be an interesting challenge over the next few years.
When you think about weather, and you can kind of go down a certain path, now that AI is allowing you to open up to so many of different types of data sets, that you can start to notice different trends, that you can kind of impact population health, you can start to impact these different things that impact us as human beings more and more. Tell us a little bit more about what research is showing you, and so how we can, as a society, start to make better decisions with the data that we're getting.
Yeah, I think that's really important for loads of different reasons, Mark. So I mean, at the moment, we talk about, say, the average climate changes. We're all familiar with like the Paris Climate Agreement of sort of keeping it to 1.5 degrees, which feels like a small number. It doesn't really mean a lot to many people. And the same with, I mean, even if we talk about carbon dioxide emissions, I mean, we talk, I think it was something like 38 billion tons of CO2 we emitted last year. That's such a big number. Again, it's almost meaningless to people. I think it's very hard to act on abstract quantities like those. But the thing we can do now with the AI is we can start to tie that weather data, that climate data in with other things. And it's exactly like you say, if you think about health, if you think about, let's say, skin cancer, for example, we know that skin cancer rates are going up. You need to have had, if you've had like a major sunburn when you're a child or something like that, it can take 20 years for like a melanoma skin cancer to increase, to appear. And we know that kind of UV radiation, those kind of skin exposure events are happening more and more. Partly because people are getting richer and we're going off to sunny places to go on holiday, but partly because of climate change as well. The places are getting hotter, they're getting more extreme temperature events. And we're able now to tie those kind of data into the AI models. It's a wonderful thing about the flexibility of neural networks and the access to the computing and the data we have now. We can tie those in. So we can start to look at, say, projections of skin cancer rates going off into the future based on the likely changes in weather extremes and climate change. And that means, I think, we can, again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that idea of turning something quite abstract and complicated and mathematical into something that's meaningful and helpful to people. So rather than saying we're going to emit 38 billion tons of CO2, we're going to cause 25,000 extra cases of skin cancer, all of a sudden that sends, I think, a light bulb above people's heads and say, hang on, what are we doing here?
And I love that how even if you used ChatGPT, Gemini or Claude or Perplexity, you could say, I've got all this data, I've got all this insight, I'm leading with these 3 or 5 impact areas. However, act as if you are a guru in this area. What are we not talking about that we should, that's got the most impact, which is skin cancer in the next 5 years? So you can be so playful and actually come up with new nuances and what the real news is from it. So it's probably becoming, you've got so many different roads to go down. Which ones do you pick as the most significant? And then which have got the most eyeballs globally on them as well to go into? Because I'm guessing from an opportunity to scale this out, there's probably an awful lot of appetite where years ago at the recession 2018, you're looking for funding. God, it feels like the tables are turned now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's there's loads of opportunities there. I think there's a kind of a happy medium place where we can get access to data, and it's also something that's meaningful to people. And those are the tricky things we're trying to navigate at the moment. We're really lucky in UCD at the moment because we've appointed Tony Houlihan former chief medical officer, and he is a big believer in this One Health vision, which includes looking at climate change and weather extremes and how they link with human health. And he's been wonderfully helpful to me in terms of pointing me to people and groups and things like that where I can actually try and get this data, because I'm moving away from the weather data where everything's open source and really nice to find, to things to do with human health where it's a little bit trickier. It requires more permissions to get those
so difficult to get the access, and then it's not in a uniformed way, and they try to manage through. But I love that, having that opportunity to have that golden thread where you're bringing in all the different data sets and all the different parameters that will impact in a variety of different ways. When you look at the future of climate change and you've got all the data to back up the story and the narrative, what concerns you most about the direction that we're going and some of the things that we're not taking into consideration?
Gosh, I mean, this in terms of human health, I think there's quite a few. So, I mean, skin cancer is one of the ones I talked about, but I think there are others in terms of infectious diseases. I mean, we've never really had cases of malaria in Ireland before. We don't train our doctors in malaria at all. Those kind of things are going to start appearing at some point. I think that's really important. And then I'm particularly interested in weather warnings and forward planning. I mean, if you think about in terms of floods, people get injured in those, but I mean, there are enormous mental health challenges and causes from weather extremes as well. Looking at how mental health adapts to climate change, I think is really important. And then building in those early warning systems, like we can use AI models to predict the likely number of people who might appear at a certain A&E after a particularly extreme storm. So in advance, warning the HSE, warning hospitals, you can expect between X and Y number of people turning up between these hours, just to enable a much better managing of the health service, I think. So there's that side of things. But the other thing that worries me in the background is the enormous energy use all of these AI models use, and it's true for weather forecasting as well. We need to make these tighter, smaller. We need to go back to the fundamental maths to make them much more efficient. And all of those things, the type of data that we use, the computing that we use, I think that's a big strand of research to
because it's a double-edged sword, because I'm so excited about the opportunity to reimagine how we're going to solve these problems using AI, but then the energy consumption is so draining on the environment. And again, you have places like Taiwan where TSMC are using 40% of their whole country to manufacture these NVIDIA chips, right? So it's a big area. And then we've got the data centers in Ireland and all that kind of issues as well. Is there anything from a perspective that we could all do individually today after this episode that if we made those changes, we would start to see some impact in the next 3, 5, 10 years?
I mean, for me, in terms of the AI usage and the AI for weather forecasting, so these AI methods, because they're beating the physics-based ones, they are coming in to our major weather forecasters. You will see that Met Éireann now, when they build their weather forecasts, use a load of physics-based ones, but they now use AI-based ones as well. Now, the cost to train those models is big. And we need to work out whether we can get away with using smaller data to train them. But once you've got them, they they cost nothing at all. Whereas the physics-based models, you keep having to churn them through. The AI-based models. So, I mean, it's not something that everyone could do, but I think if we do start to use more of these AI-based models and work out a way of training them more efficiently with the right data, not just all the data, I think that'll massively improve the carbon footprint of what we're doing.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the new PhD program that Met Éireann are supporting with the funding, and what does that look like, and how do people go about to find out more about information about that?
Yeah, brilliant. So we have some money from Met Éireann that they've given to UCD, which supports my role as well. Very generous of them, very forward thinking. They saw a few years ago where these AI weather forecasting models were going, and have made an investment in UCD. We should be able to fund around 15 to 20 PhD students through this. We've got the first tranche of them starting in September. We've just recruited those. We're still recruiting for later groups. So we've got another group starting in January 2026 and another group after that starting in September 2026. So these students will come in, they'll be working on the aspects of AI that we've been talking about, linking it to human health, improving the models, doing the things that matter to the Irish people in terms of the weather extremes that affect them. So each of those PhD students, when they come in, we're going to give them one semester, 12 weeks of advanced training in AI for weather forecasting, so they'll learn how to use and how all these new AI weather forecasting models work. We'll give them some background on climate change and the physics-based models as well. We have training lined up in high-performance computing. We have field trips lined up with Met Éireann. It's an amazing opportunity for these students when they come in.
Andrew Parnell, thank you very much for coming in and being a guest on the AI Ireland podcast today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark.
Hello, my name is Mark Kelly, founder of AI Ireland. We're passionate about collaboration and sharing the incredible stories behind every AI journey. That's why we're always looking for guests to join our in-person AI Ireland podcast experience. If you're working on innovative AI projects or have a story that can inspire others, we want to hear from you. This is your chance to share your insights, experiences and ideas with a really vibrant community that's as excited about AI as you are. So if you're ready to be part of this conversation and help shape the future of AI in Ireland, please get in touch today. We can't wait to collaborate with you. Thank you.